Hello and welcome to another episode of Innovation Deciphered. In this week's episode we delve into the people side of innovation. We talk about culture, people, the way people approach and think about innovation. And we do this with our special guests today, Derek Rees, Chief Executive of SECBE, and Sarah Winckless MBE, Executive Coach and Olympic bronze medalist. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you'd like to hear more, please do remember to like, subscribe, share today's video, and please do comment if you have any questions or queries you'd like us to follow up on. Enjoy! Derek, Sarah, thank you very much for joining me today on this latest episode of Innovation Deciphered. So today we're going to sort of delve into sort of the people side of innovation, sort of an area I know that you're both quite passionate about and are quite knowledgeable about. So we'll sort of throw that out there now and see how the next 20 minutes go. I think it's very easy to focus too much or not enough on the sort of people side of innovation, you know, people versus process, or a bit of both. I guess if we sort of start there, I mean, what is your opinion, sort of Sarah, what's more important? People, process, neither, both?
Now you're asking, well, I develop people for a living, so I'm going to start with the people piece. You have to allow people to have casual collisions, casual thoughts, allow their thinking to become expansive to create innovation. Once you've got new ideas, you need a process, because otherwise it just becomes an idea. Mm-hmm. And if it's an idea you want to implement, of course you've got that tension, you've got your creative people, and now you have to land it. So people first, then process.
Derek, would you agree? Would you?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's absolutely about getting the right mix of people within an organisation. Different people have different kind of appetites and skills to innovate and to push things. There's a comfort, there's a practice. So it's definitely getting the right mix of people, and you definitely need the right organisational culture. Otherwise, you can try all that pockets, but you won't have a system if you want. So definitely. The people are critical at all levels, but absolutely then need the system to then implement.
So me and Derek are sort of construction, sort of long in the tooth in this industry, but Sarah, obviously you come from more of a sporting background, sort of a professional athlete, moved into sort of business and coaching. How have you found working in the sort of construction industry with sort of Derek and IFLP, and do you think construction more innovative than you thought it was or would be when you first started working with us?
Great question. So I had some knowledge of the construction industry, but not a deep knowledge when I started this. And I think being a naive expert really helped me. I could come and listen to what people were thinking, wanting and doing. Interestingly, what I have seen is some real pockets of innovation, but also frustration. There's loads of great examples out there in learning, but as with any business or system, sometimes there's readiness to share and challenge each other. And I want to see that more. Interestingly, if I map that back to sport, way back when we saw Team GB come 33rd in the medal table in 1996, we had one medal which happened to come from my sport, not from me, from Sir Steve Redgrave. You might have heard of him with his mate Matt.
Yeah.
They got the gold, and that ability for those individuals and a few people around them to win medals was held in that tight, jealous way. And it was only when Team GB brought teams together in a better way, team leaders together, really encouraged them to start learning from each other, give away their secrets, not because they were going to lose their power, but they were going to become more powerful, and we got the right funding and processes behind. We started to see that team climb up the medal table, and the results have been extraordinary. So it's really interesting that you can find pockets in many, many industries, but how do you create, and it's to Derek's point, culture, the culture where there's an abundance mindset. If I share my thoughts and ideas, the system gets better and bigger, and therefore there's an abundance, rather than a mindset that says, if I share my thoughts and ideas, you might steal them, and therefore I'm going to guard them closely, and then the system can't learn as fast.
So that's a business model issue, I guess, then, that we have in the industry, is it, that makes us that closed culture, or a lack of leadership, or would you?
Well, I think there are a number of factors. Absolutely, there's the business model, because the way typically in our sector we procure is not to enable innovation, and the likes of HS2 is a good example where they are specifically procuring for innovation and almost on a match funding basis, as I understand it. So requiring the suppliers to put some money in, but they will put it in as well, and create the culture, whereas lots of other organisations look to dump the risk rather than enable change. I think our sector is brilliant. It's brilliant at solving problems, but Sarah, as you just said, there are lots and lots of pockets, and you can kind of look at the overall system, and it's not a great measure, but it might give some example. If you look at the R&D tax credit table across all sectors, I think construction is barely mentioned in the other sectors box at the bottom of that table. We're whatever, a 9% GDP, and yet as a
1.5%.
It's shockingly poor. Not because we're not good at creating innovative solutions, because we do it day in day. What we don't do necessarily is have a system within each organisation and between organisations. And I guess it's kind of interesting, Sarah, you're talking about that is sport similar or different. I think when you look across and hear stories like that, you realise that our sector, it's very easy to beat ourselves up, because in the productivity tables, the government productivity tables, construction is towards the bottom, and the UK is, in terms of the productivity compared with most G7 or G20 countries, we're also low down. So we're in a kind of seemingly a terrible position, and yet we can do extraordinary things. But it's about having that culture, having those management systems, looking to other sectors. One, I guess, for reassurance that maybe we're not as bad as we might think we are, or might beat ourselves up. But secondly, because there absolutely are brilliant other ways that people do it, and it's not about replicating those things. It's about learning and applying and saying, but if we did it like that, you look at fintech or retail or almost any other place, going, they do something quite different. How could we apply that to our sector?
Yeah, I think other industries, I mean, in some ways, a bit like what you were talking about, Team GB, there was this intrinsic almost need of, we've got to be our best, and the value is in making ourselves better, rather than understanding how, if you open that up and share, and you can all sort of improve. And I think that's sort of where we're trying to get to, but aren't quite there, I think, as an industry, this idea that, when you share and you help everyone improves, and you can still sort of do really well. There's no reason why you couldn't. You look at things like the internet and stuff like that. It's it's an open source base that people are continuously sort of building upon, learning from, and you just create a business model that allows people and organisations to thrive around it. So I think there's loads of different things we should be doing essentially, and some of that comes down to maybe changing business model, certainly sort of that leadership sort of acknowledgement of openness, and knowledge management, I think, is sort of the boring topic within innovation at times, isn't it? But without that understanding of what went well in project A to share with project B, to share with project C, and that incremental improvement. When I talk about innovation with people, one of the first things I talk about is the difference between innovation and invention.
Yeah.
Which I think, as an industry, we only think of the cool shiny stuff and not so much that incremental improvement.
Yeah.
I think maybe people are just like that in general, aren't they?
I think it's interesting because you make a really important point there, that ability, one, to Derek's point, and the tax credit, are people recognising what they're doing as innovative, or are they looking for invention? And also, how can we learn from both the successes and the failures? So actually treating both the same. There's a saying in sport at the moment, which I have to confess I don't agree with, that goes, sometimes we win and sometimes we learn. And I'm like, hang on, there's a whole load of learning here that you want to learn from. So how do we learn from both situations? And then that knowledge management is critical. How do you put it in a way, so it doesn't end up filed in whatever system that you're using, it becomes a conversation.
But I guess there's a piece that SECBE and still are looking at, which was, if you look at any project, you can learn at the end, but normally people are going, oh right, that's lovely, yeah, I'm on to the next one. And what we're trying to do is develop some kind of system that says, early on in the project, what are the first lessons that all the project partners can recognise in this project because they've worked on something similar before or just are insightful on that particular piece. What can you learn and capture it, I don't know, whether it's 20% into the project or then at 50% of the way through the project and then the last maybe 80% of the project, so there's still time to make some kind of rectifications, but capturing that. Now whether it's the kind of McKinsey type approach, but we're, as a sector, we're not great at that because we're all busy doing. But there's also that culture. We've started some conversations around this piece, and I would say almost without exception, the people we spoke to at a pretty senior level said, and at a practical level as well, said there's no way I would disclose that where I can see something might go wrong because that might come back at me and going, guys, if we're not all working together and helping to spot those, we'll just keep doing the same. So there's absolutely a culture that says, and is it avoidance of litigation or minimising that? It's saying, if we don't have the right culture that wants to learn, want to see the opportunities to improve, and capture that and apply that to our projects, then it's just going to be very slow. Well, it's incremental progress. I mean, I prefer a revolution than evolution, but evolution, steady progress is just as important as those revolutionary steps as well.
And I think that risk aversion is our biggest problem as an industry, probably, isn't it? To try and certainly trying revolution, but it shouldn't stop us being able to try the evolution, because that should be the lower risk approach towards it. You think back to some of the things that Team Sky, David Brailsford and the likes did when they first sort of revolutionised cycling. A lot of that was sort of data-driven decision making, but the 1% incremental rule, and it all sort of came together to be revolutionary. But it was all about sort of understanding how to get the best out of everything, every single part of their supply chain, their people, their processes. The level of detail that they went into was fascinating. One of the most interesting blogs I've read in years was when Chris Froome went one of the final stages of the Tour of Spain, whatever that's called. I can't remember what's on. Whatever. But it was when he was like 18 minutes behind, and then he went and absolutely destroyed everyone.
He went crazy, downhill, and he practiced that.
But they had sort of details, and how much revs, what his energy output should be, when he should eat and drink, and all of that minute. It was amazing, and he went and won by 20 odd minutes or something like that, turned it around. But that sort of ethos to data, to detail, is something that I think we struggle with sometimes, and to see the benefit of it.
And I think it's interesting because you hear from Chris Froome when he talks about the confidence he had as well that data was right. So Matt Parker, who was head of marginal gains for British cycling, it was his job to look at the whole system and find those 1%. He was as much of a talisman as David was. And so when you think about an industry, who are your talisman? Who are the people that you can start seeing the minimal viable experiments of it succeed? So I know you're talking revolution, but there's confidence in those first steps that we can test, and you can win, lose or fail on that point because the risks are smaller. And for me, that is really exciting. We've seen it in agile business, and we're seeing it in sport, and how do you bring it into the construction industry?
But I think on that, evolution is critical, because yes, we can make some big leaps, but that's not where necessarily the gains are. And there's also the issue that appetite and capacity to take. Is it about taking risk? Is it about innovating? Because it may or may not be the same thing. And our sector traditionally has had very low margins, and therefore our capacity to take the risk might be too limited to enable it all to have that comfort and that confidence. And the more that not only an individual and a team and an organisation then do try things differently and see some early wins, those incremental gains, then they build that confidence. And when you look beyond the organisation into other parts of the sector and beyond the sector, then you can see that other people are doing it and it didn't hurt as much as you thought it might, or actually there's a significant benefit. And I think that's where this innovative future leader program that we created is. There are many strengths to it, or many components, important ingredients if you want, and one of which is the bringing together people from across the sector. It's that diversity of thought, it's that diversity of experience, so that when an organisation is trying to do something different, developing their ideas, rather than living in an echo chamber and saying, well, I wonder if, it's absolutely those conversations looking up and down the value chain and saying, if you were my customer or if you were my supplier and I did this, what would that enable or hinder you from doing? So I think it's absolutely not only looking to import insights from others, but seeking to understand the impact, the risks and benefits to others as well as your own actions.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the first cohort of IFLB, and it certainly twofold for me. It changed the way I thought about certain things, the process, the understanding. Starting from Kirk on day one, where you almost come in with this sort of preordained thought that innovation requires sort of blue sky thinking and no box or anything like that, whereas now I'm very much in the camp of innovation with purpose works best. Innovation trying to solve something works best, and we as Invennt, it was there that this idea of the process that led us ultimately to gain the BSI Kind Mark for innovation management and do a lot of what we do now with innovation management, but also things like, is it Anglian Water with the health and well-being?
Thames Water.
So, that was fascinating, and we brought some of that back, and we sort of, from that, we've got, Ashley and a few of the others about, we created a health and well-being team, a health and well-being strategy, and we do lots now that we didn't do, and it was that spark of, actually it's not that hard to do the incremental stuff, especially for an organisation our size. So it was, I enjoyed my whole time on the course. I learned a lot, and we gained a lot, as well as just the connections that we continue to meet up quarterly and stuff like that, and I look forward to carrying on.
And I saw you learn a lot and make those changes, and it's great to hear the things you brought in there, but I saw a way of being that you changed as well, and that happened quite early on in our coaching conversations. Can you remember what it was?
No.
It was really interesting, because there was, when we first started, there was a pace and an anxiety and a drive that was sometimes, I think, keeping you in beta wavelength task completion mode. And you started to open up, make sure that you were listening to others, working with others, having faith in others during a time that was really tricky, because we were all being thrown into COVID, thrown online. I think you were going to be doing a whole load of travelling, and suddenly.
Yeah, well, I did one of my coaching sessions with you sat in Pearson Airport in Toronto.
You certainly did.
And I've historically been a head down, get on with it, and everyone slows me down type of person. And I think you're right that the coaching and COVID made everyone have to stop and think and reassess and try and understand how you can let go of certain things. And that is just generally probably for the industry, isn't it? People are very sort of, this is mine, and I can't let anyone in. And that lack of openness inside leadership at all levels probably hinders innovation, doesn't it?
Well, I was going to say, you mentioned COVID. COVID clearly was tragic and traumatic, And at the other level, it was extraordinarily helpful because many of the paradigms that the sector and the world lived in is, well, this is the way we have to work because that's the way we've always done it. All of a sudden, and it was overnight that people and organisations said, I have no choice but to change, so I will. And I think that government has done it before in the construction sector. I'm sure it has in other sectors too. Has given that motivation or that license to do things differently, and breaking that paradigm, saying, but that's the box I have to operate in. All of a sudden, all bets are off. Anything is possible now, and you will see some regression. You will see some entrenchment in the new way. And I guess what we need to do is make sure that we are all conscious of rivers of thinking. Of the way, well, that's just the way we do it, and making sure that we're constantly, consciously challenging that thinking and saying, yeah, but why do we procure like that? Why do we design like that? What if we did it differently?
And it's interesting because the things that ping to me, and I'm going to throw it back to you, I know you're meant to be asking the question.
No.
But we talked about these small margins, 1 to 2%. I hear in our programmes people talking about this race to the bottom, value engineering, this challenge to come in here. This challenge of sharing, and I'm going to use carefully the word blame, the blame up and down the supply chain that I see. Construction industry is such an important part of what we need to do on this planet. How do we shift that? What would yes, IFLP, we're starting in small groups and we're seeing this amazing group of people, but what more can we do? How can we support? Or if you were to give a wish to your industry, what would it be?
Well, for me, I think construction has a bad PR, almost. We are, from the public perspective, a nuisance, more than people sort of realise that, like you say, we're trying to do good things. I went to an event recently about mental health, and there was a guy from the Tier 1 there, and so as part of the Consider a Constructor scheme, a project manager has to put in their phone number and things like that so that they're easily accessible. This project manager was working sort of in the Midlands on High Speed 2 and was getting sort of 10 death threats a day because public opinion don't like the project and don't understand the project. And that's the biggest problem with things like that. You look at, you were talking about how great the Elizabeth line is. Before it opened, how much did everyone do nothing but complain about the Elizabeth line? Since it's opened, I've not heard one negative word said about it. Same with Stratford. You look at how the Olympics transformed that part of London for the good. It's created public spaces, social housing, jobs. New housing, loads of jobs. It's amazing. 90% of people probably can't remember how much more it cost than it was supposed to in the first place.
I sat on the local board.
But I think what that points to is, there are a number of different elements it brings. One is that people generally don't like change. There's comfort in familiarity, if you want, and whether as the general public or people within our sector. But that road's, I'm used to going along that because I go past a coffee shop and say hello to whoever it is or whatever it may be. Ben, I think you're right. We're not always as good at PR or communication as we could when we say yes, there's going to be disruption, but by building this road or this hospital, the difference it makes to people's quality of life, the radical shift in healthcare provision because of the quality of the facilities that are there, that's the piece that we should be better communicating at. And when we're to attract the highest caliber of people at whatever function, the best pipe fitters or designers or managers, or doesn't matter, it's across that spectrum. If the more we can communicate the massive contribution the sector makes to our lives, the better. We know that 40% I think is of carbon emissions come from either the built environment process or the facilities that we create. 40% of all carbon emissions is massive, so we can make such a difference if we communicate and focus on the end game, on the value that we add, the purpose of the facility rather than just the process. I think that's where we really need to focus.
Yeah, and we've seen recently how construction gets stuck in the middle of politics unnecessarily. You look at sort of High Speed 2 north of Birmingham, how that's been canned now, and yes, it's expensive, but where's the value and where's the loss of value from not doing it? The regeneration of Crewe and other areas around the UK that it was going to allow is lost because of sort of public pressure. I think we're going on a bit of a tangent, but I think as a country, if we can politically sort of move infrastructure decision making away, we could do so much more up and down the country. That's a completely different conversation. Maybe that can be the next podcast.
Well, maybe it should be, but also that's about the PR piece. It's the same story. If politicians have to be in charge, giving them the right story to tell, being able to hold that PR, might be able to have them hold their hand in the fire longer. So, yeah.
Well, particularly given a politician typically is in post for 5 years. Let's for sake of argument. The facility.
42 days or something.
I can't remember which politician that was. But it's a short tenure when put in the context of the built environment. We're talking about how long has the London Underground been around and what have you. And so having the right narrative to make informed decisions, and whether you're a politician or whether you're leading a large corporate or a tiny team, it's that same, having that narrative, knowing what the destination needs to be, the difference it's going to make, and help and inspiring everyone to go, okay, well, I'm feeling stuck on this bit, but I know where I'm trying to get to. That, I think, is critical, and it allows you to, at whatever level you are, have that confidence to do something different. Because if you don't do it once, you'll never build up that muscle, if you want that, and the confidence to look beyond the edge of the pond. I wonder if that other sector is doing something different. They seem to be. If we go back to what I said earlier, that construction generally is way down on the productivity map. Well, let's look at the other sectors who are higher up that map, and whether it's sport or automotive or whatever it may be, and going, what do they do differently that we could learn from? And I think that the digital revolution that has transformed many sectors, we're getting there, but I think it is absolutely that confidence to try that change is good, and it doesn't hurt that much, and actually the transformation could be amazing.
So just to sort of wrap things up and finish it off, so if you had to tell sort of in an individual or organisation who were keen to sort of see how they could become more innovative, other than joining IFLP or contacting Invennt for support and help, which obviously everyone will, what third thing would you suggest that people look at, do, maybe read? Where's that nugget for you that where do they start their innovation journey?
I'm going to challenge, and it's around time to think. So how do you value your thinking as much as you value your doing until you're working on sticky problems, spending time with the neurons struggling around it? Then you're not going to either evolve, or evolution or revolution won't yet happen.
Derek?
I absolutely go with that, creating that thinking time, and I said earlier about the projects we're too busy doing and not enough time thinking and pausing. I guess it's, mine would be, Invert the Thinking. There's a great book called Humanocracy, and it effectively says, rather than the organisation being kind of top down and everyone does what they're told within reason, it absolutely inverts the organisation and empowers everybody to then constructively challenge the leadership of other teams and say, actually, I think I can do a better job on that in leading that team. So that inversion, that empowering of everyone in the organisation, because everyone, almost without exception, says the people at the grassroots, almost always know what a better way of doing it. If you look at healthcare, the clinical staff, absolutely know a better way of doing it, but don't have that empowerment. So if you can invert the organisation, empower everyone to own and put forward their ideas with that confidence and trust, and to go and look elsewhere, have that time to think at every level, I think that's the thing that makes a real difference.
I mean, humanocracy is next on my
It's a great
audible.
I'm halfway through it.
So no, I've heard plenty of people go on about it now that I've decided I know I must listen to it. So Sarah, Derek, thank you very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure as always. So thank you for watching, listening, and I hope you enjoyed this latest episode of Innovation Deciphered. Please do remember to like, subscribe and share, and if you'd like to be a guest on one of our future podcasts, please do drop us a line.